The sky changed on a Tuesday morning. People around the world looked up and saw them. Massive ships, each one the size of a city, hung in the air above Earth. They appeared without warning, without sound, without any sign they were coming. One moment the sky was clear and blue. The next moment shadows fell across entire countries. Deho was having coffee in his small apartment in Seoul when his phone exploded with notifications. Every news channel showed the same thing. Giant alien vessels floating above New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and dozens of other cities. The ships were dark, almost black, but their surfaces moved like liquid metal. They reflected light in strange ways that hurt to look at for too long. He worked as a linguist for the United Nations. His job was to study how people communicate across different cultures. He had spent 15 years learning languages, studying human behavior, and helping people understand each other. Now he stared at his television screen and wondered if any of that mattered anymore. The phone rang. It was his supervisor. Her voice shook as she spoke. All UN personnel were being called to emergency stations. They needed everyone who understood communication. Everyone who might help humanity speak to whatever was up there in those ships. Deho grabbed his coat and ran. The streets were chaos. Some people ran in panic. Others stood frozen, staring at the sky. Cars crashed because drivers forgot to watch the road. Deho pushed through crowds to reach the subway, but the trains had stopped running. He ended up walking 5 kilometers to the UN Emergency Center, joining thousands of others flooding toward the building. Inside, military officers shouted orders. Scientists argued about theories. Politicians from every nation tried to speak at once. Deho found his section and sat at a computer station. His hands were shaking. He forced himself to breathe slowly and focus on his screen. For 3 days, nothing happened. The ships just floated there, silent and still. Humanity tried everything to communicate. Radio signals, light patterns, mathematical sequences, even old-fashioned flags and symbols. The aliens gave no response. They simply waited, watching. Military forces gathered, but everyone knew it was pointless. These ships had traveled across space to reach Earth. They had technology humans could barely imagine. What could missiles or tanks do against beings who could cross the stars? Still, soldiers took positions because doing something felt better than doing nothing. Deho worked without sleeping. His team analyzed every image of the ships, looking for patterns or symbols that might be language. They found nothing. The vessels remained perfectly smooth, unmarked, impossible to read. His eyes burned from staring at screens. His colleague Minseo, a biologist, brought him food he barely tasted. On the 3rd day, at exactly noon in every time zone around the world, the aliens finally spoke. Every device that could make sound did. Televisions, radios, phones, computers, even car speakers and alarm systems. The voice came through all of them at once, speaking in hundreds of languages simultaneously. Everyone on Earth heard the message in words they could understand. The voice was female, beautiful but cold, like music played on instruments made of ice. It said, "People of Earth, we are the Valith Dominion. We have traveled far to reach your world. In 3 days, your leaders will send representatives to these coordinates. We will meet. We will talk. Do not attempt to harm our vessels. Do not attempt to run. There is nowhere in your solar system we cannot reach. We will see you in 3 days." Then silence returned. The ships remained floating, dark and waiting. Humanity had its answer, and it was terrifying. The aliens were not here to make friends. They were here to deliver orders. The UN building became a war room. Every major nation sent their best people. Generals, scientists, diplomats, and experts in every field gathered to prepare for the meeting. Deho was assigned to the communication team. They would try to establish dialogue, find common ground, learn what the aliens wanted. A woman named Hana arrived from the Military Intelligence Division. She was tall, sharp-eyed, and moved with the precise control of someone trained for combat. She had been planning Earth's defense strategies, though she admitted to Deho that all her plans were useless. How do you defend against enemies who could appear in your orbit without being detected? How do you fight beings who had clearly mastered physics in ways humans were only beginning to understand? They worked side by side, Deho preparing communication protocols while Hana analyzed tactical information. Despite the dire situation, they found themselves talking during brief breaks. She told him about her daughter, who was 7 years old and loved drawing pictures of stars. He told her about his sister Yoonji, a teacher who believed humans were basically good even when the news suggested otherwise. They talked about small, normal things because thinking about the giant alien ships made them feel too helpless. The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Deho barely slept. None of them did. They reviewed every first contact scenario humans had ever imagined in science fiction, in academic papers, in military simulations. None of it felt adequate. When the day arrived, representatives from every nation traveled to the designated coordinates in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The aliens had built a structure there, a floating platform that had simply appeared overnight. It was made of the same liquid metal as the ships, constantly shifting and reforming. Walking on it felt wrong, like stepping on something alive. Deho stood among the crowd of humanity's representatives. His heart pounded so hard he thought others might hear it. The air above the platform shimmered. Light bent and twisted. Then she appeared. The alien queen was not solid. She was there, but also not there. Her form was humanoid, but wrong in ways that made Deho's eyes hurt. She was tall, perhaps 3 meters, and her body seemed to be made of light and shadow mixed together. Her face had features similar to a human woman, but they moved and changed like water. The only constant was her eyes, which were completely black and reflected nothing. When she spoke, her mouth did not move, but her voice filled everyone's mind directly. It was the same cold, beautiful voice from the broadcast. She said, "We have come to claim your world. You will hear our terms. You will accept them. There is no alternative." The meeting had begun and Earth's fate hung in the balance. The Queen stood before them, a being of shifting light and shadow, and the weight of her presence made everyone want to run. But they could not run. They could only stand and listen as she explained why she had come to Earth. Her voice entered their minds without passing through their ears. It was wrong, unnatural, but impossible to ignore. She spoke slowly as if explaining something to children. The Valeth Dominion had existed for 10,000 years. They had spread across 300 star systems. They had conquered every species they encountered. None had ever stopped them. Earth, she said, had resources they needed. Rare metals in the crust. Elements that could only be found on planets with specific conditions. Water that was pure and abundant. The aliens would take what they wanted. Humanity would be moved to other worlds, colonies where they would work in mines and factories. The process would take approximately 50 years. Earth itself would be stripped down to bedrock. Someone in the crowd made a sound, a sob or a gasp. Deho felt cold spreading through his chest. He looked at Hana standing next to him. Her face had gone pale, but her jaw was set angry. Around them, representatives from every nation stood frozen in horror. The Queen continued speaking. She said that normally, the Valeth did not bother explaining their actions to species they conquered. They simply arrived, overwhelmed any resistance, and began extraction. It was efficient. It was how they had built their empire. But Earth was different, she said. Humans were different. For 6 months, the Valeth had watched Earth from beyond the solar system. They had monitored communications, observed behavior, studied human civilization. They had seen something unusual, something that had never appeared in the 300 other species they had conquered. The Queen did not explain what that something was. She only said it interested her. Because of this interest, she was willing to make an offer. It was not mercy, she was clear about that. The Valeth did not show mercy. But she was curious, and curiosity was rare for beings who had seen everything the galaxy could show them. She would spare Earth on one condition. One human would belong to her. The representatives erupted in shouting. Questions and protests filled the air. The Queen waited silent until the noise died down. Then she explained her terms. One human would come with her willingly. They would leave Earth and live aboard her flagship. They would serve as her companion, her subject, her property. She would study them, question them, test them. If this human proved interesting, if they could show her what made humanity special, Earth would be spared. The Valeth would leave and never return. But if the human failed, if they were boring or weak or disappointing, the original plan would proceed. Earth would be harvested. Humanity would be scattered across the stars to live as workers in the Valeth Empire. There would be no second chances. A diplomat from France asked how long the human would have to interest her. The Queen said she would know within 1 year. Either humans were worth preserving or they were not. 1 year would be enough to decide. A general from Russia asked what would happen to the human who went with her. The Queen's form rippled almost like a laugh. She said that was not the general's concern. The human would be hers to do with as she pleased. They would be treated well if they pleased her, or not well if they did not. What happened to one human should not matter when the fate of 8 billion others hung in the balance. Daeho felt sick. He looked around at the other representatives. Everyone wore the same expression of horror and helplessness. They were being forced to choose. Sacrifice one person or sacrifice everyone. It was not really a choice at all. The American Secretary of State stepped forward. She was an older woman with white hair and steady hands. She asked the Queen why she wanted this. Why not simply take what she wanted? Why play games with humanity? The Queen's black eyes seemed to focus on the Secretary. For a moment, Daeho thought he saw something in that alien face. Not emotion exactly, but maybe the shadow of something like loneliness. The Queen said that conquest was easy. She had conquered 300 worlds and it had taught her nothing new. Every species fought or surrendered in predictable ways. Every civilization fell to superior force. It was boring. But humans, she said, had shown something in her observations, patterns of behavior that seemed illogical. Individuals sacrificing themselves for strangers. Groups cooperating even when competition would benefit them more. Art created in the midst of suffering. Philosophy that questioned everything, even when answers would be more comfortable. It was strange, possibly meaningless, but possibly interesting. She wanted to understand it. One human studied closely might provide answers, or might prove that her observations were wrong, that humans were just another species destined to be conquered. Either way, she would have her answer. The platform fell silent. Wind blew across the ocean, but no one seemed to notice. They were all thinking the same thing. Who would go? Who could possibly be chosen for this? How did you select one person to represent all of humanity? A scientist from India said they should send their best people. Nobel Prize winners, brilliant minds who could show the Queen humanity's achievements. Others disagreed. Send soldiers, they said. People who would not break under pressure. Send diplomats skilled in negotiation. Send volunteers who wanted glory or had nothing to lose. The arguments began immediately. Each nation wanted input. Each group had different ideas about who should go. Hours passed in debate while the Queen simply stood there, watching them argue like she was watching an interesting experiment. Daeho realized that was exactly what they were to her. An experiment. A curiosity. Not people with lives and families and dreams, but specimens to be studied. The Queen finally spoke again. She said that she did not care about credentials or achievements. She wanted someone who truly represented humanity, someone who came willingly, knowing what it meant, someone who understood the weight of their choice. They had 1 week to decide, then she would return for an answer. If no one volunteered, if humanity could not choose, she would choose for them. She would simply take someone, and after she took them, Earth would be harvested anyway because a species that could not make hard choices did not deserve to survive. With those words, she vanished. The light bent, twisted, and she was gone. The platform beneath their feet dissolved. Ships appeared to carry the representatives back to their nations. The meeting was over. Daeho flew back to Seoul in silence. Around him, other representatives talked frantically, making plans and arguments, but he could not stop thinking about the Queen's black eyes and what he thought he had seen in them. Not cruelty exactly. Something worse. Complete indifference to whether humanity lived or died. They mattered to her only as long as they were interesting. When he reached his apartment, he found Minseo waiting outside his door. She had been watching the broadcast. Everyone on Earth had watched it. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes and asked what they were going to do. Daeho had no answer. He had spent his whole life studying communication, building bridges between cultures, helping people understand each other. Now he faced something that barely saw humans as worth understanding at all. That night he did not sleep. He stood at his window looking up at the sky where the alien ship still floated, dark and patient. Somewhere up there the Queen waited for humanity's answer. 1 human for 8 billion, 1 life for an entire world. It was the cruelest choice imaginable, and they had 7 days to make it. The world descended into chaos after the Queen's ultimatum. Every government argued about who should be sent. Every news channel debated the decision. Every person on Earth had an opinion. Some said they should send criminals, people already in prison for terrible crimes. Others said that was insulting, that it would doom humanity. Send heroes instead, they argued. Astronauts, soldiers, people trained to handle impossible situations. Religious leaders volunteered themselves, saying they could teach the Queen about faith and human spirit. Scientists volunteered, believing they could impress her with human knowledge. Athletes volunteered, wanting to show human physical potential. The list of volunteers grew longer each day. Thousands of people were willing to sacrifice themselves to save Earth. But the arguments continued. Which volunteer truly represented humanity? A Chinese engineer? An American teacher? A Brazilian doctor? Every choice seemed to favor one culture over another. The UN formed committees to evaluate candidates. Psychologists tested volunteers for mental strength. Military experts assessed their ability to survive stress. Still, no consensus emerged. Daeho watched all of this from his office. He had not volunteered. He had not even considered it. He was just a linguist, someone who studied how people talk to each other. What could he possibly offer an alien queen who had seen 300 civilizations fall? He felt useless, small, irrelevant to the massive decision facing humanity. On the fourth day, his sister Yoonji called him. She was crying. Her school had closed because parents were keeping their children home, wanting to spend time with their families in case humanity chose wrong. Her students, just 7 and 8 years old, were terrified. They asked her questions she could not answer. Will the aliens take my mommy? Will Earth be destroyed? What happens if we pick the wrong person? Yoonji was strong, but talking to her brother, she broke down. She said she did not want to die. She did not want her students to die. She did not want humanity to end because they could not make an impossible choice. Daeho tried to comfort her, but what could he say? He felt the same fear, the same helplessness. After the call ended, he sat in silence. His office was empty. Most people had gone home to be with their families. Only a few remained, still working on the impossible problem. Hana was there, running simulations that would never matter. Minseo was there, studying the alien ships with equipment that could barely detect them. Taiyang, his childhood friend who worked in cybersecurity, was there trying to hack into the alien vessels even though it was hopeless? They were all doing something, anything, because doing nothing was unbearable. Daeho thought about his work. He had spent 15 years learning to communicate across cultures. He understood that language was more than just words. It was context, emotion, shared experience. When two people from different backgrounds talked, misunderstanding was easy. Connection required effort, patience, and genuine desire to understand the other person. The Queen wanted to understand humanity. That was what she had said. She was curious about patterns she had observed. Humans sacrificing for strangers, creating art in darkness, questioning everything. These were not physical abilities or technological achievements. They were cultural, philosophical, deeply human things. Maybe she did not need a genius or a hero. Maybe she needed someone who understood why humans were the way they were, someone who had spent their life studying what made people human. The thought was terrifying. Daeho pushed it away. He was nobody special. There were people much braver, much smarter, much more qualified. But the thought kept returning. What if the Queen did not want the best human? What if she wanted an average human who understood their own species? On the 5th day, Daeho requested a meeting with the UN Selection Committee. They were surprised. He had not volunteered. He had not asked to be considered. But he was a respected researcher, so they agreed to hear him out. He stood before them, 12 people from 12 nations, all exhausted and desperate. He said he wanted to volunteer, not because he was the best choice, but because he might be the right choice. The Queen wanted to understand humanity. He had spent his career understanding humanity. He knew human weakness and human strength. He knew how cultures clashed and cooperated. He knew that what made humans special was not any one individual, but the collective patterns of behavior that emerged when people tried to survive together. The committee members looked skeptical. One asked what made him different from the thousands of other volunteers. Daeho admitted he was not different. He was ordinary in almost every way, but maybe that was the point. Humanity was not defined by its exceptional individuals. It was defined by billions of ordinary people making small choices every day. Choices to help or hurt, to create or destroy, to give up or keep trying. He could show the Queen that, not through being extraordinary, but through being honest about what humans really were. The room fell silent. Then Hana, who had been standing in the back as an observer, spoke up. She said Daeho was right. They had been thinking about this wrong. They were trying to send someone impressive, someone who would make humanity look good. But the Queen did not care about impressive. She had conquered impressive civilizations. She was bored by strength and technology. She wanted to understand something new. Minseo, also present, added that Daiho had one quality most volunteers lacked. He genuinely cared about understanding others. Most people talked at each other. Daiho listened. If the Queen truly wanted to learn about humanity, she needed someone who could explain, not just demonstrate. The committee debated for hours. They brought in other candidates to compare. They ran background checks and psychological evaluations. They made Daiho answer hundreds of questions. Why did he really want to go? Was he suicidal? Did he understand he might never return? Did he have family who would be devastated? He answered honestly. Yes, he had family. His sister would be heartbroken. Yes, he was terrified. Yes, he knew he might die or suffer or be trapped forever. But 8 billion people would live. His nieces and nephews would grow up. Yunji's students would learn and play and become adults. The price was one life. His life. It seemed like a fair trade. On the 6th day, the committee made their decision. Daiho would be humanity's representative. The announcement went out to the world. Reactions were mixed. Some people celebrated, grateful someone had been chosen. Others protested, saying a Korean linguist was too limited a choice. Why not someone from Africa? Why not someone younger? Why not someone older? But time was running out. The Queen would return in one day. The decision was made. Daiho spent his last day on Earth saying goodbye. He visited Yunji and held her while she cried. He told her to be strong for her students, to show them that humans could face anything. He called his parents, who did not understand but supported him anyway. He met with friends, colleagues, people who had been part of his life. Minseo gave him a small metal object, a tracker she had designed. It probably would not work on the alien ship, but she wanted him to have it anyway. A connection to Earth, however small. Taeyang gave him a digital file containing pictures and videos of Earth, music, art, moments of beauty. Something to remember home. Hana gave him nothing physical, but she looked him in the eye and said she would find a way to bring him back. It was probably a lie, but he appreciated it anyway. That night, Daiho stood on the same platform in the Pacific Ocean where they had first met the Queen. Cameras from every nation broadcast his image across the world. Billions watched as he stood alone waiting for the aliens to take him. The sky split open. Light poured down. The Queen appeared, her form shifting and terrible. She looked at Daiho, this small human standing before her, and asked if he came willingly.
He said yes.
She asked if he understood what it meant.
He said yes.
She asked if he knew he might never return home. He said yes. The Queen's black eyes reflected nothing, but her voice in his mind carried something new. Not warmth exactly, but perhaps interest. She said humanity had surprised her. They had chosen not their strongest, but their most thoughtful. It was curious. She would see if it was wise. Light surrounded Daiho. He felt himself lifting off the platform. Below he could see Earth spreading out beneath him, beautiful and blue. Above, the dark ships waited. He closed his eyes and let the light carry him up, away from everything he knew, toward an uncertain fate that would decide humanity's future. The light faded and Daiho found himself standing inside the alien ship. His first thought was that nothing looked like he expected. He had imagined metal corridors and mechanical rooms like in science fiction movies. Instead, the walls seemed alive. They moved slowly like breathing, and changed color from dark blue to deep purple as he watched. The floor beneath his feet felt soft but solid, like walking on water that would not let him sink. He was in a large chamber, circular and tall. The ceiling curved up into darkness. Streams of light flowed through the air like rivers, connecting different parts of the room. They made no sound but gave off warmth when Daiho walked near them. Everything felt organic, as if the ship was a living thing rather than a machine. The Queen appeared in front of him without warning. One moment he was alone, the next she was there. Up close, her form was even more unsettling. She was shaped like a tall human woman, but made of something that was neither solid nor liquid. Light and shadow mixed inside her body, constantly moving. Her face had eyes, a nose, a mouth, but they shifted position slightly, never quite staying where they should be. Looking at her too long made Daiho dizzy. She spoke, and her voice filled his head. She told him he would live in this chamber. It would provide everything he needed. Food, water, rest, entertainment. He could ask the ship for anything and it would appear. She would visit him each day to conduct tests. If he cooperated, he would be treated well. If he resisted, things would become unpleasant. She did not specify how unpleasant. She did not need to. Then she left, simply vanishing like before. Daeho stood alone in the strange room and felt the weight of what he had done crash down on him. He was aboard an alien vessel, millions of kilometers from Earth with no way home. He had volunteered for this, but now that it was real, terror gripped his chest. His breathing became fast and shallow. His hands shook. He forced himself to calm down. Panicking would not help. He had trained himself for years to stay focused under stress, to observe and analyze even when afraid. He looked around the chamber carefully, trying to understand it. The walls responded to his attention, brightening where he looked. He walked to one side and touched the surface. It felt warm and smooth, almost like skin. He thought about the tracker Minseo had given him. It was in his pocket, a small piece of Earth technology. He pulled it out and looked at it. A tiny metal object that probably meant nothing to the aliens but meant everything to him. It was proof that Earth existed, that people there cared about him. He held it tightly. Time passed strangely on the ship. Daeho had no way to tell if hours or days went by. The chamber never got completely dark. The walls always glowed softly. He felt hungry and thought about food. Immediately, a portion of the wall opened and a platform extended holding something that looked like fruit. He ate it cautiously. It tasted sweet and filled his stomach, but it was not quite like any food he knew. He tried to sleep but could not at first. The room was too strange, the situation too overwhelming. Eventually, exhaustion won and he dozed off on what seemed to be a bed that had formed from the floor. When he woke, the Queen was standing over him. She said the tests would begin now. Daeho sat up quickly, his heart racing. The Queen gestured and the chamber changed. Images appeared in the air around them. They showed Earth, cities burning, wars being fought, pollution spreading, animals going extinct, humans hurting each other in countless ways. The Queen asked her first question. She wanted to know why humanity destroyed their own world. She had observed hundreds of species and most protected their home planets carefully. Survival instinct should prevent self-destruction. Yet humans seemed determined to ruin Earth. Explain this, she demanded. Daeho thought carefully before answering. He said humans were not trying to destroy Earth. They were trying to survive, but they were short-sighted. Humans lived maybe 80 years. That was not long enough to see the consequences of their actions. They made choices that felt good immediately but caused problems later. It was not evil, just limited perspective. The Queen was not satisfied. She showed him images of wars. Humans killing each other over resources, beliefs, borders. She asked why cooperation did not override violence. Surely they could see that working together would benefit everyone more than fighting. Daeho explained that human brains evolved in small groups. For most of human history, people lived in tribes of maybe 100 or 200 individuals. They learned to cooperate within their group, but compete with outside groups. Modern civilization happened too fast. Humans built cities of millions, but their brains still thought in terms of small tribes. That was why conflict continued. Evolution had not caught up with civilization. The Queen listened. She showed him more images. Poverty existing alongside wealth. Some humans living in luxury while others starved. She asked why the strong did not simply take what they wanted. In nature, power determined survival. Humans had the same pattern but pretended otherwise. Why lie about it? Daeho said that was exactly what made humans different. Yes, humans had inequality and injustice, but they also had the ability to feel shame about it. They could see suffering and want to end it, even when it did not benefit them personally. Some humans dedicated entire lives to helping strangers. That was not logical by pure survival standards, but it was deeply human. The Queen made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been dismissal. She said compassion was a weakness that her species had eliminated generations ago. Efficiency required removing emotional responses that interfered with rational decisions. Yet she had observed this human compassion and it puzzled her. It seemed to make humans weaker but also more resilient in unexpected ways. She showed Daeho images of art, music, literature. Humans creating beauty in the midst of suffering. She asked what purpose this served. Art did not build shelters or grow food. It was wasted effort. Yet humans devoted enormous resources to creating things that had no practical function. Deho smiled for the first time since boarding the ship. He said art was how humans made meaning. Life was hard and then you died. That was the basic truth for any living thing. But humans refused to accept that was all there was. They created beauty to prove existence had value beyond just survival. Art was humans telling the universe that they mattered. The Queen fell silent. Deho wondered if he had said something wrong. Then she spoke again, softer than before. She said her species had forgotten how to create. They built machines and conquered worlds, but they had not made art in thousands of years. It had seemed unnecessary. Efficiency was all that mattered. But watching humans create beauty in terrible circumstances, she wondered if her species had lost something important. The questioning continued for what felt like days. The Queen showed Deho the worst of humanity and demanded he justify it. She showed him genocide, slavery, cruelty beyond measure. Each time, Deho did not defend the actions. He admitted they were terrible, but he explained the context, how humans could be good and evil, often at the same time, how the same species that committed atrocities also produced people who fought against them. He talked about human complexity, how individuals could be kind to their families but cruel to strangers, how entire societies could be welcoming and xenophobic simultaneously. Humans were contradictions, and that was both their weakness and their strength. They were not consistent, not predictable, not simple. That made them messy and difficult, but also endlessly creative in solving problems. The Queen listened to all of it. Deho could not tell if he was succeeding or failing. Her expression never changed. Her black eyes revealed nothing, but she kept asking questions, kept showing him images, kept pushing him to explain humanity. Days blended together. Deho lost track of how long he had been aboard the ship. Then one day the Queen told him she wanted to show him something. The chamber's walls became transparent. Deho gasped. He was looking out into space. Stars stretched in every direction, more than he had ever seen from Earth. And below, far below, was a planet. The Queen said this was one of the worlds her species had conquered. Deho looked at it. The planet was gray and brown, covered in geometric shapes. Buildings and structures arranged in perfect patterns. It looked orderly, efficient, and completely dead. The Queen said 3 billion beings lived there. They worked in perfect cooperation. Crime did not exist. Waste did not exist. Everything functioned exactly as designed. Deho looked at the lifeless planet and understood what the Queen was really asking. She had conquered hundreds of worlds and made them all like this, efficient but empty. She was starting to wonder if efficiency was enough. If winning had cost her something she could not name. He looked at her and asked if she was lonely. The Queen's form flickered. For a moment she looked almost solid, almost human. Then she was shifting light again. She did not answer, but Deho thought maybe he was finally starting to understand what she wanted from him. The Queen did not answer his question about loneliness, but something changed after that moment. Her visits became longer. She asked different kinds of questions. Instead of demanding Deho justify human flaws, she asked him to explain human joy. What made humans happy? Why did they laugh? What gave their lives meaning beyond simple survival? Deho tried his best to answer. He talked about small things. The taste of good food, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of someone you love laughing at your joke. He explained that humans found happiness in tiny moments as much as in great achievements. A parent watching their child sleep. Friends sharing a meal. A perfect sunset. The Queen listened with what seemed like genuine curiosity. She asked if these small pleasures were really enough. Humans died. Everyone they loved died. All their creations eventually crumbled. Did knowing this not make the small joys meaningless? Deho said no. Knowing life was temporary made the joys more precious, not less. If humans lived forever, a sunset would become boring after the millionth one. But because life was short, each sunset mattered. Each laugh with a friend was valuable because there would only be a limited number of them. Humans learned to treasure moments because moments were all they had. The Queen was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said something surprising. She told Deho that her species lived for thousands of years. Individual Valeth could survive for 10 or 15,000 years if they chose. Death was optional for them, a choice rather than an inevitability. And because of that, nothing felt urgent, nothing felt precious. Time was infinite, so why treasure any particular moment? She said her species had become efficient because efficiency was the only thing that mattered when you had endless time. Emotions were inefficient, art was inefficient, joy was inefficient. So the Valeth had slowly eliminated these things, focusing only on expansion and control. It had made them powerful, but it had also made existence feel empty. Deho understood then why she was really interested in humans. She had conquered 300 worlds and it had taught her nothing except how to conquer more worlds. She was looking for something she had lost, or maybe something her species had never had. A reason to care about existence beyond just continuing to exist. He asked if he could show her something. The Queen agreed. Deho pulled out the small device Taeyang had given him. The digital file of Earth. He did not know if it would work on the alien ship, but he touched the screen and images appeared, floating in the air between them. Pictures of Earth. Mountains and oceans. Cities at night sparkling with lights, children playing in parks, old couples holding hands, markets full of colorful food, street musicians playing instruments, flowers blooming in spring, snow falling in winter, the millions of tiny beautiful moments that made up human life. Then videos played, music from different cultures. A Korean drumming performance, rhythmic and powerful. A Brazilian carnival full of dancing and color. An Indian wedding, elaborate and joyous. African singing, voices blending in complex harmonies. Each one different, but all of them expressing something fundamentally human, the need to celebrate, to create, to share joy with others. The Queen watched it all in silence. Her form, usually in constant motion, became almost still. When the videos ended, she did not speak for a long time. Deho waited, unsure if he had done something right or wrong. Finally, she asked him why humans created so many different cultures. It would be more efficient to have one language, one set of customs, one way of doing things. Why maintain thousands of different traditions when uniformity would make communication and cooperation easier? Deho explained that diversity was not a flaw to be fixed. It was a strength. Different cultures approached problems in different ways. When humans faced a challenge, having many perspectives meant more potential solutions. Diversity made humanity messy and complicated, but it also made them adaptable. No single disaster could wipe out all human knowledge because it existed in many different forms in many different places. More than that, he said, diversity made life interesting. A world where everyone thought the same way, ate the same food, made the same art would be unbearably boring. Humans loved variety. They traveled to experience different cultures. They learned languages to connect with different people. The differences between groups were not barriers to overcome, but opportunities to discover new ways of being human. The Queen listened carefully. Then she did something unexpected. She took Deho on a journey. The chamber walls became transparent again, and the ship began to move through space faster than Deho could comprehend. Stars blurred past them, galaxies rotated in the distance. The Queen was showing him her empire. They visited world after world. Each one looked similar to the first he had seen. Orderly, geometric, efficient, and lifeless. The Queen said the Valeth had restructured every conquered planet to match their ideals. Perfect organization, perfect cooperation, perfect control. The native species were integrated into Valeth systems. They lived, they worked, they reproduced, but they no longer created their own art or followed their own traditions. They had become part of the machine. The Queen said this was supposed to be good. The Valeth brought peace to chaotic worlds. They eliminated hunger, disease, crime. Every being in her empire had shelter and purpose. By any logical measure, the Valeth had improved the lives of trillions of creatures. So why did it feel hollow? Deho looked at the endless gray planets and felt deep sadness. He said that peace without freedom was just another kind of death. The beings living on these worlds might be physically alive, but they were not truly living. Living meant choosing, struggling, failing, trying again. It meant creating things that might be imperfect but were yours. It meant having the freedom to be unhappy. Because without that freedom, happiness meant nothing. The Queen's form flickered rapidly. A sign Deho had learned meant she was processing something difficult. She asked if Deho was saying her entire civilization was wrong. That 10,000 years of expansion and control had been a mistake. Deho chose his words carefully. He said it was not his place to judge an entire civilization. But he could say what he observed. The Valeth had won every battle and lost themselves in the process. They had become so focused on conquering that they forgot why they were conquering. Power for its own sake was meaningless. Existence without purpose was just marking time until death. He asked the Queen what she wanted. Not what her species wanted, not what efficiency demanded, but what she personally desired. Had she ever asked herself that? The Queen was silent for a very long time. The ship stopped moving. They floated in space between star systems, surrounded by darkness and distant light. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Quieter, less certain. She said she did not know what she wanted. She had existed for 8,000 years. She had conquered, controlled, and commanded. She had never questioned her purpose because her species told her what her purpose was. Expand the empire. Increase efficiency. Eliminate chaos. She had done all of that brilliantly, and at some point, without noticing when, she had become numb to it all. Watching humans through her observations had been the first time in centuries that she felt curious about anything. Humans were weak, inefficient, and chaotic. They should have been easy to dismiss. But they kept doing things that made no logical sense, sacrificing for strangers, creating beauty in darkness, finding joy in temporary moments. It was inefficient, but it was alive in a way the Valeth had not been alive for thousands of years. Deho said that maybe efficiency was not the most important thing. Maybe being alive meant being inefficient sometimes, wasting time on art, on love, on joy, doing things that served no practical purpose except making existence feel worthwhile. The Queen looked at him with those black, reflective eyes. She asked if he truly believed one human could show her something. 300 conquered civilizations could not. If he really thought his species had answers hers had been searching for. Deho said he did not have answers. He had questions, same as everyone. But humans kept asking questions even when answers did not come. They kept creating meaning even when the universe provided none. They kept loving people even though everyone died eventually. Maybe that stubborn refusal to accept meaninglessness was what made them special. Not strength or intelligence, but determination to matter despite everything suggesting they did not. The Queen's form became very still. Then she said something that surprised Deho completely. She told him he had succeeded. He had shown her what she needed to see. Humanity would be spared. Earth would remain untouched. The Valeth would leave and never return, but she had one request. She asked if Deho would stay with her voluntarily, not as a prisoner but as a companion. She wanted to keep learning from him. She wanted to understand more about what it meant to be alive rather than just existing. If he agreed, she would ensure Earth remained protected forever. If he refused, she would honor her promise and leave Earth alone. But the protection would only last as long as Valeth laws required. Deho stood in the transparent chamber, surrounded by stars, and faced the choice that would determine his future. Deho asked for time to think about the Queen's request. She granted him 3 days. During that time, he was alone in his chamber, wrestling with an impossible decision: stay with the Queen and ensure Earth's permanent protection, or return home and hope the Valeth kept their word even after he left. He thought about Yunji and her students, about Minseo and her research, about Taeyang and his endless curiosity, about Hana and her daughter who loved drawing stars, about the 8 billion humans living their lives on Earth, unaware that one man's choice would affect their future. But he also thought about the Queen. Despite her terrible power and alien nature, he had seen something in her that moved him. Loneliness, emptiness, a being who had everything except purpose. She was reaching out to him because she had no one else who could understand what she was experiencing. Her own species saw her as a perfect leader, too valuable to question. Only Deho, a weak human who knew nothing of power, could speak to her as an equal. On the second day of his deliberation, something unexpected happened. The chamber suddenly turned red. Alarms sounded, harsh and dissonant. The Queen appeared instantly, her form more solid and urgent than Deho had ever seen. She said something was wrong. Something on her own ship was happening. She vanished before he could ask questions. Deho was left alone with the blaring alarms and red light. He paced nervously, wondering what could go wrong on an alien vessel. Then he remembered the tracker Minseo had given him. He pulled it out and was shocked to see it was blinking. It was receiving a signal. That should have been impossible. The device was basic Earth technology. Nothing on it should function this far from Earth. He activated the display. A message appeared, text only, heavily corrupted but readable. It was from Taeyang. His friend had somehow managed to hack into the alien ship's communication system. The message was brief and terrifying. Taeyang had been monitoring alien transmissions since Deho left Earth. With help from international intelligence agencies, They had broken some of the Valeth encryption. They discovered something horrifying. Not all the aliens agreed with the Queen's decision to spare Earth. A significant faction believed she was showing weakness by negotiating with humans. These aliens thought Earth should be harvested as originally planned. More than that, they believed the Queen was becoming unfit to rule. Her interest in Deho and human culture proved she was losing focus on the Empire's goals. The faction was planning a coup. They would remove the Queen, kill Deho, and proceed with Earth's destruction. The coup was happening now. Deho's heart raced. He tried to leave the chamber, but the door would not open. He was locked in, probably for his own protection. But if the Queen was fighting for control of her ship, if she was distracted by rebellion among her own people, Earth was in terrible danger, he thought frantically. What could he do? He was one human trapped in a room on an alien ship. He had no weapons, no way to help, no way to even communicate with the Queen. But he had to try something. He pulled out Taiyang's device again and tried to send a message back. The encryption was beyond him, but he typed simple words anyway, hoping they would get through. Tell Hana the Queen is in danger. Tell her the coup is happening. Tell her Earth needs to prepare. He did not know if the message sent. The device sparked and went dead, overloaded by trying to transmit across impossible distances. Deho threw it against the wall in frustration. Then the chamber door opened. 3 aliens entered. They were not like the Queen. Their forms were more solid, more angular, more clearly aggressive. They looked at Deho with what he interpreted as contempt. One spoke, and its voice cut into Deho's mind like knives. It said the Queen's experiment was over. The human would be eliminated. Earth would be harvested. The Valeth would return to proper priorities. Deho backed away. The aliens advanced. He had nowhere to run, no way to fight. But he refused to die quietly. He shouted at them, asking if they were cowards. The Queen had made a decision. Did they have so little honor they would betray their own leader? Did their civilization value loyalty so little that overthrow was how they solved disagreements? The aliens paused. One said humans did not understand. The Queen had grown weak. Efficiency demanded strong leadership. By showing interest in an inferior species, she had proven herself unfit. This was not betrayal, but necessary correction. Deho laughed bitterly. He said the Valeth talked about efficiency but seemed extremely inefficient. Fighting among themselves, wasting resources on internal conflict, destroying their own chain of command. Humans might be chaotic, but at least they understood that working together was better than tearing each other apart. Before the aliens could respond, the chamber exploded with light. The Queen materialized between Deho and his attackers. Her form was different now, more solid, more focused, and terrifying in its intensity. She spoke one word and the rebel aliens froze. Then they disintegrated. Their forms simply came apart, scattering into particles of light that faded into nothing. The Queen turned to Deho. She was breathing hard, or doing something like breathing. Her form flickered rapidly. She said the rebellion had been crushed. The conspirators were eliminated. But it had been costly. She had lost ships and loyal crew members. The Empire was damaged, possibly fractured, all because she showed mercy to one planet. Deho asked if she regretted it. The Queen was quiet. Then she said something that surprised him. She said no. The rebellion had been building for centuries. Her species was stagnant, going through motions without purpose. The coup would have happened eventually. Her decision about Earth simply brought the conflict to the surface sooner. More than that, she said, fighting the rebellion had made her feel something she had not felt in thousands of years. Passion. The desire to protect something that mattered. For 8,000 years she had conquered without caring. She had ruled without investment. But facing rebels who wanted to destroy Deho and Earth, she had cared. She had fought with genuine fury because something was at stake that mattered to her personally. She looked at Deho with those black eyes and asked if he understood what he had done. He had reawakened something in her that her species had deliberately eliminated. Emotion, attachment, care. It made her less efficient, more vulnerable, more likely to make mistakes. But it also made her feel alive. Deho said he understood. He had done the same thing to himself by volunteering. He could have stayed safe on Earth, comfortable and afraid. Instead, he had chosen this impossible situation. It was inefficient, dangerous, probably stupid, but it mattered. That was what humans did. They chose meaning over safety. The Queen told him that Earth was now under her permanent personal protection. No Valeth would ever threaten it. She would ensure humanity developed freely, without interference. But she had a warning. The rebellion proved her empire was unstable. She would need to spend years rebuilding trust, eliminating remaining conspirators, restructuring command systems. She would be busy with internal politics and military concerns. If Deho stayed with her as she requested, he would be part of that chaos. He would witness power struggles and conflicts he could barely understand. It would be dangerous and difficult, but he would also be helping her reshape Valeth civilization. His human perspective might be valuable in building something better than what existed before. Or he could return to Earth now, safe and celebrated. The Queen would honor his choice either way. Deho thought about everything that had happened. He thought about how the Queen had changed from the cold, indifferent being he first met to someone capable of fury and passion. He thought about how his presence had somehow started that transformation. And he thought about the 8 billion humans on Earth who would benefit from whatever new relationship developed between their species. But mostly he thought about the question the Queen had asked him days ago. What gave his life meaning? Not survival, not comfort, but connection, challenge, the chance to make a difference. Staying here would be hard, maybe impossible, but it would matter. He told the Queen he would stay, not as her prisoner or property, but as her companion and advisor. He would help her rebuild. He would show her more about what it meant to be human, and maybe he would learn something about what it meant to be Valeth. The Queen's form stabilized. For the first time, Deho saw what might have been a smile on that alien face. She said humans continued to surprise her. She had expected him to run home at the first chance. Instead, he chose the harder path. It was very inefficient. It was very human. It was exactly why she found his species fascinating. She told him there was one thing he needed to do before committing fully. He needed to say goodbye to Earth properly. Not forever, but for a long time. He should go home one last time, explain everything, and let his people know humanity's future was secured. Then if he still chose to return, she would be waiting. The light surrounded Deho again, but this time he was not afraid. The Queen was sending him home to Earth temporarily, to say proper goodbyes and explain what had happened. As the light carried him down through space, he watched the alien ship grow smaller above him. It looked different now, not threatening but magnificent, a testament to what intelligent beings could build when they pushed the boundaries of possibility. Earth grew larger below, blue and green and beautiful. Deho felt his chest tighten with emotion. He had thought he might never see his planet again. Now he was returning as a hero, but also as someone who would leave again. The situation was complex in ways he struggled to process. He landed on the same platform in the Pacific Ocean, where this had all begun. But this time hundreds of people waited for him. Military personnel, UN representatives, journalists, scientists. Everyone wanted to know what had happened aboard the alien ship. Was Earth truly safe? What was the Queen like? Would the aliens return? Hannah was the first to reach him. She looked exhausted, like she had not slept since he left. She grabbed his shoulders and searched his face, checking if he was hurt or damaged. When she satisfied herself that he was physically okay, she demanded answers. What happened with the rebellion? Her equipment had detected some kind of battle in the alien fleet. Were they under attack? Deho explained everything as best he could. The tests, the conversations, the Queen's growing understanding of humanity, the coup attempt by aliens who thought showing mercy was weakness, the Queen's decision to permanently protect Earth in exchange for his voluntary companionship. The room fell completely silent as he spoke. When he finished, chaos erupted. Some people celebrated, thrilled that Earth was safe forever. Others were suspicious, wondering if the aliens could be trusted. A few were angry, saying Deho should not have agreed to return to the ship. He belonged on Earth, they argued. He had done his duty. Let someone else go if the Queen wanted human company. But Deho was not asking for permission or approval. He was explaining what would happen. He would stay on Earth for 2 weeks, then return to the alien ship voluntarily. During those 2 weeks, he would help establish communication protocols between humanity and the Valeth. He would advise leaders on how to interact with the Queen. He would prepare humanity for a future where they were not alone in the universe, but also not in danger. The UN organized immediate meetings. Deho spent hours in briefing rooms, explaining Valeth culture as much as he understood it. He told them the aliens valued efficiency above all else, that they struggled with concepts like art and joy, that their empire was going through internal changes that might make them less aggressive in the future. He emphasized that the Queen was genuinely trying to learn and change, but that she was still immensely powerful and should be respected. Minseo came to see him on the third day. She brought food, actual Korean food that tasted like home. They sat in a quiet room away from the chaos, and she asked him the question everyone wanted to ask, but most were afraid to. Was he scared? Daeho admitted he was terrified. He was going to live among aliens who had just experienced a violent rebellion. He would be surrounded by beings who might resent him for the Queen's interest in humanity. He would be far from Earth, unable to return easily, possibly for years or decades. Everything about the situation was frightening, but he was also excited. The Queen was trying to reshape an empire that had existed for 10,000 years. She was attempting to introduce concepts like art, emotion, and compassion to a civilization built on pure efficiency. It was the most important anthropological study in human history. He would be there helping, observing, learning. How could he pass up that opportunity, no matter how dangerous? Minseo cried. She said she understood but wished he did not have to go. Daeho cried too. He said he wished a lot of things were different, but this was the path his choices had created. He had volunteered to represent humanity, and now he would continue doing that, just in a different way than anyone expected. His sister, Yoonji, visited with her students. The children were fascinated, asking endless questions about aliens and spaceships. One small girl asked if Daeho would be lonely up there. He said yes sometimes, but loneliness was part of doing important things. And he would think about Earth every day, about all the people here who were living good lives because of the choice he had made. Taeyang came with a gift. He had built a new communication device much more sophisticated than the tracker. It would let Daeho send messages to Earth from the alien ship. The Queen had given permission for limited communication, agreeing that keeping in touch with his home planet would help Daeho adjust. Taeyang said he would be monitoring constantly, so Daeho should message whenever he needed to talk. The 2 weeks passed too quickly. Daeho met with government officials, spoke to crowds, gave interviews. Everyone wanted to see the man who had saved Earth. Some called him a hero, others called him a fool. Daeho thought he was probably both. On his last day, he visited his favorite places in Seoul, the park where he used to read as a student, the restaurant where he met friends, the university where he had learned to love languages and culture. Each place held memories, pieces of his life that had led him to this impossible moment. That evening he sat with his parents in their small apartment. They were old now, and struggling to understand why their son had to leave again. He tried to explain about duty, about humanity's future, about the chance to build bridges between civilizations. They nodded but looked sad. His mother held his hand and made him promise to take care of himself. His father said he was proud, even if he did not fully understand what Daeho was doing. The final goodbye was on the same platform where everything had started. This time, fewer people attended. Just close friends, key officials, and family. Daeho stood with them as the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky orange and pink. He memorized the colors, knowing alien ships probably did not have sunsets like this. Hana gave him a final message to carry. She said if the Queen ever broke her promise, if aliens ever threatened Earth again, humanity would fight. They had learned things from the Valeth technology left behind. They were developing defenses. It might take centuries, but humans were patient. They would not be easy victims if betrayal came. Daeho promised to remember. But he did not think betrayal would come. He had seen the change in the Queen. She was not an enemy anymore, not really. She was something more complex. An ally, perhaps, maybe even a friend. Though that word felt strange applied to an alien being of immense power. The sky split open. Light poured down. The Queen appeared above the platform, magnificent and terrible. She looked at the assembled humans, then at Daeho. She asked if he was ready. He said yes. She asked if he was certain. He said yes. She asked if he would regret this choice. He said he did not know, but he would make the choice anyway because that was what it meant to be human. The Queen's black eyes reflected the sunset colors. She said something then that surprised everyone listening. She said she had been wrong about humans. She had thought they were weak because they were small and fragile. But she had learned that strength came in many forms. The strength to be vulnerable. The strength to care even when caring hurt. The strength to choose difficulty over comfort because it was right. The Valeth had conquered 300 worlds with force, but they had not truly won anything worth having. Humans who had never conquered anything beyond their own planet had somehow achieved something the Valeth never could. They had built meaning in a meaningless universe. They had created beauty in darkness. They had chosen to matter despite every reason not to. The Queen said she had much to learn from them, and Deho would be her teacher. Light surrounded Deho one last time. He looked at his sister, his friends, his colleagues. He looked at the sunset and the ocean and the earth beneath his feet. Then he looked up at the stars and the ship waiting for him. Both were home now in different ways. He was a bridge between two worlds, a translator for two species that needed to understand each other. As he rose into the sky, he heard people shouting goodbye. He heard Yunji crying and Hana calling that she would be watching. He heard Taiyang promise to send messages constantly. And beneath it all, he heard the sound of waves on the ocean, the sound of Earth continuing its eternal motion. He arrived on the ship, and the chamber welcomed him back. It had changed. There were windows now showing Earth clearly. The walls had colors, blues and greens mimicking his home planet. A small growing area held plants, actual Earth plants someone had sent up. The Queen was trying to make him comfortable in her own alien way. She appeared beside him, and her form had changed too. She was more solid now, more stable. She said the rebellion had clarified things. She was restructuring the empire, introducing new concepts, art programs for Valeth children, philosophy classes in schools, required cultural studies. It would take generations to change her species, but change was beginning. Daiho would help with that. He would advise, teach, challenge when necessary. He would be the voice reminding the Valeth that efficiency alone was not enough, that beings needed purpose beyond just existing, that power without wisdom was ultimately hollow. It was an impossible job for one human, but Daiho had already done several impossible things.